This is Preston Pham, and I'm here to present you my research paper in regards to information technology on world growth and Asia zone impact. So I did, prepare a presentation on PowerPoint slide deck in regards to this paper. However, in my first attempt, it did take a little bit more longer. It took me 33 minutes just to, do the presentations. Rather than that, I will, dive straight to the paper and go sections by sections, which I think will be more thorough, and then I can, have reference point which I can speak a little bit faster. Okay, so in my paper, the abstract. So after 1980s, there has been numerous of debates, whether by researchers whether if information technology has its contributions, on firms' productivity or a firms' business value. Some say that they do, and some say that they don't. This can be due to sample size, data, different ways how researchers conceptualize IT, and then their prime focus was just on the correlations of IT's effect on firms' productivity on a macroeconomic level. Yet this paper, this research paper, will detect the implication of IT on a macro level and accounting for GDP and world growth and etc. And then I have the table of contents here. Then afterwards, I move down to my introductions. So as the intro, in our modern era, information technology has a widening effect across numerous of domains in social and economics frontiers. This is a driven factor for globalization and a catalyst for global integrations, bringing together to more opportunities and economics potentials. Afterwards, I go down and set up the stage with the IT prelude. So the IT prelude is to give a little background for the readers to see the revolution of technology over time. It's dated back to I went back down to the Middle Ages, to the Industrial Revolutions, then to our modern day information technology revolutions. Perhaps this might be interesting in this section is that the Industrial Revolution did not spread throughout the world quickly as the information technology says revolution. So it took 100 years or more for the Industrial Revolution to spread its technology through the world, and with this bringing higher living standards and bringing more income higher income per capita for people. Yet it took over 100 years. While for IT revolutions, it has only taken 20 years to transfer throughout the world. And as you can see, that if anywhere in the world that has internet connectivity, IT revolution has done its job in bringing people to more opportunities. Then in here, I talk about the world growth theory, and in this table, you can see across. This table is just to show you to see what portion of the pie does each region take a piece of, and you can see here from the G7's economy in 1989 to 1995, it accounts a little bit more than 50% of the world's growth. But however, in 2000 and 2004, it drastically declined. Yet surprisingly, developing Asia, as I highlight here, has an astonishing results of moving from 20.06 points to 24.44 points to 27.31 points. And down here, as you can see in the developing Asia's 7 economies, down here, you will see that China and India in 2000 and 2014 accumulates 63% of GDP growth shares in the 7 developing countries' economy. And then moving down here, I talk, this is where in my previous video took a little longer, is the literature review. So I will shorten it to, talk about how in the past 3 decades, there have been rigorous studies about the impact of IT and its contributions. Some research measures the impacts on industrial companies, such as manufacturers on durable goods and non-durable goods. Some add in various variables, such as with other inputs besides just labor and capital. Some research will just like juxtapose between IT and non-IT investment to see which one have a higher ROI, return on investments, and etc. Since this paper, talks about IT and also world growth. I did mention about world growth at the top, and so now I would deep dive in this portion more on what IT is about to give the readers, to show all the research is done for this purpose. So in here, I talk about the IT is transforming the world to a network economy where IT is the main infrastructure to bringing global integrations. So in here, I talk about how like the uses of IT, such as for supply chain management, going down here to ELN, electronic laboratory notebooks and customer relationship CRM, and IT also helps in designing and in productions process such as CAD systems, and there is ERP, enterprise resource planning system, VoIP, a point of sale system, and MIS, management information system, such as database and tracking all the data and everything and analyzing those data. Now I move down to the IT impact on Asia's frontier. This is the sections talking about the effects of IT on the Asia continent. Due to the pressure of globalization and the trench in international competition, developing Asia countries have to adopt to technological readiness. And then they have to focus their attentions and their investments on their technological capacity. Down here, I talk about the the conceptualized growth theory for these developing countries. Such as Republic of Korea. Down here is also Hong Kong and Singapore, Taiwan, and then East Asian countries. This includes Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam added to this group. Here the important part, the data methodology section. So this research paper's goal is to examine the importance of IT investment affect cross-country differences in economic growth of Asian countries among the rest of the world. So the data was extracted from OECD 2005 STAN database, and then the database did not permit the disaggregations of measures of information technology components, such there as computers, semiconductors, software, and communication equipment, but categorized them all together as ICT, which is information communication technology. So the data is the cross-country panel data consists of 1,761 observations from 1990 to 2005, ranging across 110 countries. Then the data were separated into 7 defined regions to mimic up above is the G7 economies: Europe, Asia, South America, Africa, Middle East, and North America. So the first module here is just to set up some parameter. It's the basic Cobb-Douglas function in which GDP is the result of TFP, total factor productivity, times the contribution of labor, and also times the amount of K capital. And after that, we kind of have a sense of idea that TFP is equal to IT output plus IT investment plus R&D investment, and lastly adding populations. For the third module is the measurement of GDP. The changes delta of GDP is equals to the delta of TFP plus the derivative of GDP over the amount of labor plus the derivative of GDP over the amount of capital contributions. So module 4 will be considered as a reduced form regression functions, where we would substitute TFP down to GDP, which gives the delta of GDP is IT output plus IT investment plus R&D investment, and adding up populations plus the derivative of GDP over L labor input, and plus the derivative of GDP over the amount of capital. And also, I wanted to find the percentage of the GDP measurements and all of this, the variables. I want to do a log functions to find in percentage terms. Down here, I talk about the regression equations and which type of regressions I've done. And then this is the results. The first one I've ran is just the basic reg command for OS. Second, I did an xtreg with a FE fixed effect. And also the last one I did a RE random effect on xtreg. So it's surprising funny here is that one unit of populations actually has a negative effect by 0.712 unit on GDP, which can be explained that countries like, let's say, Vietnam, it's growing populations. The more populations, it's not going to contribute to labor input because there is not enough jobs out there. And the more populations, the government has to worry about. There are people who are homeless and the welfare. So it can be affect the GDP, bringing the GDP down. However, this is more important over here is that IT output has a significance and then does bring positive correlations to GDP, as well as IT investment do have significance. And you can see here the observation 1,761, 110 countries, and the R square is 61%, which a relatively a good percentage of R square. So moving along down to here, I have table number 2 is the basic translog estimation results. And unlike the previous, this one's the whole entire world observations of 1,761 and country is 110. This one I limited down to only 25 Asian countries just to see specifically how much impact does IT have on their GDP. So I see here that it does has positive correlations, and it's within the 95% confident interval, and then the p here, the value here is less than 0.05, which is a good p-value. Does have significance for here TFP, IT investment, labor growth, capital growth has a very lower coefficients down here. So, and then after I move on to the log estimation results, again, this is on the focus on 25 Asian countries. As you can see here, this can be explained that a percentage, 1 unit percentage raise in IT output leads to 14% for growth for GDP. P-value is good, and then the R square is good, and you can see here. So it seems like IT investment, R&D investment do have some kind of collinearity. They might have, they might be a little bit close to each other. However, they do, do show significance affecting with the GDP and then, with the other variables. And then down here, table number 4, I did a mean summary, and for 7 groups, I divided by there's a G7 top world economies: Africa, Asia, Europe, Middle East, North America, and South America. And you can see here the IT investments and R&D investments are huge in the G7 economies, and then their IT output has the highest of all. However, the second coming follower is 78.51, which is Asia on the IT output. And so down here in the empirical analysis, I just talk about my analysis of the results from above, and then do with the comparison or supporting with my conceptualized theory of the Asian developing countries that I did up here about these gang of fours, developing countries in Asia, accounting for the time stage of 2005. So at the very later, I want to go down to the discussions. So in this discussion, in previously I did mention about some of those countries, developing countries, do accept FDI, foreign direct investment. So as a recommendations in the future, I wanted to see if I can find for the research to find a data on that, and to see if if the FDI have some kind of effect on these Asian developing countries. along with their GDP. And I also have some questions and recommendations for measuring TFP, measuring also the amount of inputs, capital, labor, and all of that, and maybe account for non-IT investments, since you can easier to juxtapose between IT investment and non-IT investments for different countries, because some countries do like an investment of IT, and some countries may not like the investment IT, and they rather do the non-IT investments on whether it's their buildings, their training force, or anything other than that. And lastly, as my conclusion, is just to summarize what my findings are, and wrap up this paper with some relevant informations. And then down here will just be my reference. And then thank you for watching this video.